every network engineer knows how to use VLANs to segment different networks, right? For instance, in this scenario, we have the network 10.0.0/24. By default, it's going to be placed on VLAN 1 on this switch. And if all these servers, Linux 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7, are on the same VLAN, on the same network, they will be able to talk to any other machine on the same network and on the same VLAN. But what if we have a requirement to prevent those servers to talk to every other server? Let's say, for instance, we want to only allow communication between Linux 1 and Linux 2 to be on the same group, Linux 4 with Linux 3 to be on a different group, and Linux 7 to be on a different group from Linux 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now you might be thinking, probably we could use a different network, but we are not allowed to change the network. And if we change the VLAN that is assigned on these ports, it means that they won't be able to reach the router 6, which is the gateway of the subnet 10.0.0/24. Now, the way to meet this requirement is by using something called as private. And let me see if I can write this correctly. So, and I'm private VLAN. Okay, so private VLAN allow us to create kind of micro segmentations using VLANs, so different kinds of VLANs, but keeping the same network or the same IP address on these devices. So there are two types of private VLANs that we can use. We have the community VLANs, and we have the not private but isolated VLANs. Okay, so community VLANs, they allow a group of machines or resources on the same community to talk to each other, but they won't be able to talk to a different group or a different community. As for isolated VLANs, they are only allowed to talk with, let's suppose, the gateway of that specific network. They're not able to talk with other isolated VLANs or community VLANs. And because we need to allow them to talk with their gateway, we have a third type of VLAN that is called the promiscuous. Okay, so the promiscuous will be where we're going to place the gateway or a common VLAN that all the other VLANs, private VLANs, will be able to talk to. Okay, and we're going to see how to deploy this. So in this scenario, we're going to create two community private VLANs. So community 2, where we're going to place Linux 1 and Linux 2, and community 4, where we're going to place Linux 3 and Linux 4. And we're going to create a single isolated private VLAN where we're going to place Linux 7. At the end, after deploying all of these, Linux 1 will only be able to talk with Linux 2 and R6. Linux 3 and Linux 4 will be able to talk to each other in R6, and Linux 7 will be only allowed to talk with R6. Okay, so let's see how to do this. Okay, so first we want to make sure that everything is working by default. So let's bring Linux 1 because this is the first time. Okay, so let's go to Linux 1 terminal and let's try to ping 10.0.10.02. Okay, so that's going to be Linux 2. Okay, I'm not. So Linux 2 is reachable, Linux 3 is reachable, 4 and 7. Okay, and even 6, the gateway. Okay, so we can test that from Linux 1 we are able to reach all the other servers. Okay, that's great. Now let's minimize this and let's start our configuration. So all we have to do is to configure the switch, okay, to support private VLAN. Okay, now the font size is great now, and to help me with this configuration I have my script ready here, and if you want you can download this script directly on my platform, and I'm going to share the link in the video description. So first thing we have to do is to go to configuration mode and set the switch to transparent mode. Okay, so then we're going to create the VLANs, and I'm going to use VLANs 6, 2, 3, and 4. Just make it intuitive. And so first we're going to create VLAN 6 and then VLAN 2, 2, 4. Okay, done. So next we're going to start creating our community or promiscuous VLAN. So the primary, so we have to set first a primary VLAN. In this case, it's going to be VLAN 6 because that's going to be the promiscuous VLAN. So VLAN 6, and we're going to set this as the primary, and then we're going to make the association with the other secondary VLANs, in this case 2 to 4. Okay, then we're going to start configuring our community VLANs. So VLAN 2, that's going to be a private VLAN community. VLAN 4, that's going to be a private VLAN community. And VLAN 3, that's going to be a private VLAN isolated. Okay, so we are done at this step. So now we're going to associate VLAN 6, okay, here on interface E00 of the switch. And so let's go to E00 switch port host. Just make sure that I don't have anything configured then. And so first we're going to set this to private VLAN promiscuous mode, and then private VLAN mapping our primary VLAN 6 and our secondary VLANs from 2 to 4. Okay, this is done. So far we are creating the promiscuous VLAN on interface E00. So now let's go to, we have here private, so that's going to be on interface 1. So interface E11, so switch port host, and then switch port modes, private VLAN host, switch port private VLAN host association. So our primary is 6, and this is going to be the isolated VLAN 3. Okay, so this is done. So now let's go to interfaces 1 and 2. So interface range 1 and 2, switch port host, switch port mode, private VLAN host. Let me bring a command, just make sure. And switch port private VLAN host association. Expand this a little bit. So it's going to be the primary VLAN 6 and VLAN 2. Okay, so the last one is going to be interface 03 and 10. So switch port host, switch port mode private VLAN host, switch port private VLAN host association. That's going to be my primary VLAN and the community VLAN. Okay, done. So we want to wait a little bit, so just make sure that all the interfaces are up, and we want to validate that everything is working. So let me bring this a little bit. Okay, so we have interface 00, that's the promiscuous VLAN, and we have interface 01 and 02, that's community VLAN for group 2, and interface 03 and 10, so that's community VLAN 4, and then we have isolated VLAN on 11, that's VLAN 3. Okay, that's great. So now let's go to Linux WAN, close this, and let's try the same test again. So can I reach Linux 2? Yes, I can. What about 3? I cannot. What about 4? Okay, also doesn't seem to be working. What about 7? And it's not working. So from Linux WAN perspective, looks like we met the requirements. So what about 6? We are talking with R6. So the same will be true with Linux 2. So let's just test this on Linux 4. Bring the terminal here. So Linux 4 should be able to reach 3. Okay, that's great. And shouldn't be able to reach 1, nor 2, nor 7. Okay, so but it should be able to reach 6 as well. And same should be true for Linux 3. So let's just test this from Linux 7 perspective. So Linux 7, it shouldn't be able to reach any other Linux server. So we test this 2, 3, and 4. Okay, but it should be able to talk with the router. And from the router, we didn't make any change, so it should be able to reach. So it's reaching every other Linux server. So, and that's how you deploy private VLANs, a feature commonly used in environments where we need to segregate servers, machines that are in the same network, but we are not allowed to change the network. So guys, if you took value from this video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.